Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Nigeria orders reinforcements to the southeast, where protests calling for an independent Biafran state are on the rise. At least 3 people are reportedly killed on Wednesday. Also, a group of survivors of Rwanda's 1994 genocide are calling for the indictment of 2 French officers. They accuse some of France's forces in the country at the time of turning their backs on communities facing massacre. And Madagascar's struggling to raise awareness amongst rural communities of what they can do to lessen the risk of catching the plague. Since August, the number of victims of the disease has been on the rise. Military reinforcements have been sent to southeastern Nigeria, where separatist rallies are gathering momentum. At least 2 police officers and 1 bystander reportedly lost their lives in violence on Wednesday. Demonstrators in Onitsha are calling for an independent Biafran state, a cause that in the 1960s sparked a civil war. Nicolas Germain has more.
45 years after the end of the Biafra civil war, there has been a wave of protests like this one in Nigeria's southeast in recent weeks. The unrest was sparked by the arrest in October of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra pressure group. He pleaded not guilty to charges of criminal conspiracy. Some analysts say his arrest was a bad decision.
And the primary mistake the present government did is that they tried to hype his personality by arresting him. They would have granted him bail. Immediately the court said that he should be granted bail, but they did not do that. And that increased his popularity and made him to be more visible, making the international community to be asking who is Nnamdi Kanu.
In the southeast of Nigeria, residents say they are neglected by the central government.
You don't like me, you don't want my help, you don't want my job, you don't want anything from me. Now you're forcing me to come and stay one Nigeria with you.
Biafra is our own. We fought for it, though we lost for it. But I think Biafra is something that we have to achieve, because when Biafra is being achieved, this eastern part of Nigeria will have a turn around. Because the Nnamdi are strong people. We are businessmen.
The conflict from 1967 to 1970 started when Odumegwu Ojukwu unilaterally declared independence from Nigeria. The war left more than 1 million dead, mainly from starvation and disease.
At least 6 people were killed in suicide bombings in the north of Cameroon, the northern Cameroonian town of Waza. The governor of the province says that 2 teenage girls who blew themselves up late on Tuesday most likely came from Nigeria and were linked to Boko Haram extremists. Earlier in the week, 2 Cameroonian soldiers were killed by a landmine in the village of Gankse. Boko Haram's continued to attack countries contributing troops to a regional anti-terror force. Yaoundé claimed to have dealt a major blow to the jihadists by freeing more than 900 hostages in an operation last week. African delegates at the Paris Climate Change Summit are pushing for climate justice and for the world's heaviest polluters to take on the lion's share of the compromise needed to reduce global carbon emissions. The continent's trying to balance limiting greenhouse gas emissions with maintaining the pace of economic growth. Key to that is improving access to energy and light to the hundreds of millions of people who currently do without. American singer Akon has his roots in Senegal. He's backing an initiative to bring solar energy to rural communities around the continent.
The idea came from me, of course, being a child growing up in Senegal and Dakar. But I didn't have electricity myself. But when I moved to the U.S., I experienced electricity for the first time. So years down the line, even now to today, when I went to back to Kaolack in the area where I was raised, people still didn't have electricity, and everyone was still living off kerosene lamps and candles. And I just felt like something had to be done, because there's no way in 2014 there's still no electricity in certain parts of Africa. So we wanted to be a part of the change.
China's President Xi Jinping met with his South African counterpart in Pretoria on Wednesday as the 2 nations settled infrastructure loan and investment deals worth around $6.5 billion. President Jacob Zuma says that bilateral cooperation is stronger than ever. China's influence in Africa continues to grow, despite Beijing's own economy taking a hit. Xi Jinping began a tour of the continent in Zimbabwe on Tuesday and will co-chair a China-Africa forum in Johannesburg on Friday. A group of survivors of Rwanda's 1994 genocide and human rights campaigners are calling for the indictment of 2 French officers in connection to the mass killings. They accuse some French soldiers of having allowed the slaughter of hundreds of people in the hills of Bisesero, despite knowing the risks they faced from Hutu militia. Our correspondent has the story.
In June 1994, this rugged trail was a path to horror. A few days after the start of Operation Turquoise, the French military took this path to reach the hills of Bisesero. Ezekiel vividly remembers the day, June 27th, when he thought his ordeal had ended thanks to the arrival of the white men.
I was hiding here in a hole when we heard that the French were coming. We came to meet them here at the crossroads.
Ezekiel and hundreds of other starving, traumatized and often severely wounded Tutsis decided to leave their hiding places.
They said they would come to protect us, and we thought that they were going to save us. We showed them the still warm bodies of people that had just been killed. But they told us to go back to our hiding places and that they'd be back later. We begged them, but they left us anyways.
His wife and 4 children were killed the next day. This herder is also a survivor of Bisesero.
One of the killers was accompanying the French, and he told the other killers that there were many of us. They decided to come and hunt us down night and day.
This herder's entire family was killed on these hills. The French officers facing trial deny they knew about the carnage on the day. While survivors recognise they would not otherwise be alive today to tell their story had the French not come back, for them, a trial is absolutely justified.
If I'd known how to press charges, I'd have done it a long time ago.
Less than half the survivors of June 27 were still alive when French troops returned 3 days later.
Rural villages in Madagascar facing the threat of the plague are struggling to get the treatment they need. Many communities are ill-equipped to deal with the disease, and the infected are sometimes forced to face long journeys to find the little help that is available. Gael Borja tells us more.
This village has become infamous for the number of people who've died there from the plague this year. In the region, 10 people succumbed to the disease in August. This woman lost her son. He was just 17 years old.
This was my son's bed. Now there are only 7 of us left in this house.
In this family portrait, the uncle, 2 nephews and a son, almost the whole family has been affected by the disease.
The disease started with a headache. He was cold. We left the village early on Monday morning. Several of us came with those who were ill. Some were unconscious, some were carried on our backs or on bicycles. They were coughing, their lungs hurt and they were spitting blood. People were scared of us. Even our own families didn't want to come close to us anymore.
This man survived the plague, but only after an 8-hour walk to get treated.
My eldest son, who got ill at the same time as me, is dead. We sold about 25 rice containers and geese to pay our medicine. We sold 7 fat geese. In total, it cost us 100 euros. Hadn't I got that, I would be dead.
Those diagnosed with the plague were treated in this hospital. Here there are only 76 beds and a derelict quarantine room for a community of more than 200,000 people.
At the moment, there are no contagious people, so we took the mattresses to avoid wasting the equipment. Renovation depends on public subsidies. For the moment, we have no budget. That's why it has not been renovated.
A lack of hygiene, deforestation, poverty, all are linked to the spread of the infection. Authorities are striving to raise awareness among the rural population. The plague cannot be totally eradicated because bacteria are in the soil. The only solution, it seems, is prevention. The Ministry of Health is going to set up a community monitoring system in order to detect infection before it's too late.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Do stay with us, though. A short break. More coming up.